Most people agree the difference between surviving and thriving in business today is good leadership. But what exactly is good leadership? Good leadership is the art and science of people working together to create great results. You see it when leaders with good character multiply their impact with proven success habits. Great results happen when people work together and create a positive impact on their customers, colleagues, and their communities. Good Leadership is also a game-changing consulting firm headquartered in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Unlike other firms who coach individuals, Good Leadership coaches teams to exceed their goals, both personally and professionally. The firm's mission is to spread the idea goodness pays. What's goodness? Goodness in business is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. Good leadership coaches accelerate alignment in teams during disruptive changes in the business, and they bring out the goodness in people with a proven process called the Goodness Pays Leadership System. It's worth your time to learn more because leading with goodness is confirmed by research to produce better business results. The secret is here in this exceptional book, How Goodness Pays. So if you want to explore new ways to produce better results faster, visit goodleadership.com. Watch for a goodness dinner near you, or get tickets to a Good Leadership Breakfast series. It's an exciting workshop held only in Minneapolis 8 times a year.
Hello and welcome back to the Good Leadership Breakfast, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. Give yourselves a round of applause for showing up this morning. It's been 21 months since we've gathered together for this. And John and I were talking a few minutes ago. There's a lot of things that we can do online. You know, we can hop onto Zoom and accomplish a lot of things, connect with a lot of people from around the world. So many things we can do online, but very few things that we can do only in person. And hopefully you've already experienced some of them this morning, meeting new people, connecting with old faces, and talking about how goodness pays. My name's JC Lippold. I will be your host today, as well as moving into 2022. And one of the beautiful things about this Good Leadership Breakfast is it happens not only because of sponsors like you, but because you engage around your table in conversation, and you engage within the collection of data about what we think and how we respond to goodness. So I'd like to welcome Christine Hobro, President of Retail Banking for Old National Bank, up as representative of our title sponsor. Let's hear it for Christine, everybody. Oh, yeah.
Good morning. Thank you, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I'm energized by being here. I wanted to put all in, but didn't worry about the little space, and all you would have seen was all. I'm excited to be here. I'm fairly new to Old National, and the reason I came is for the people and the company values. Day in and day out, our values guide what Old National is, does, and what we're all about, how we work with our clients, how we support our communities. And we don't just do it with our volunteerism, but we put our money where our mouth is as well. And that makes me really proud to be at Old National. I hope it does for those of you that already bank with us, and if you're looking for a great bank that's a partner, track us down at any one of our 31 locations or oldnational.com. But I want you to know we're proud to be the partner of the speaker series, and we've heard a lot of great speakers talk about the ways that their leadership has impacted and resulted in their success. Good leadership is the foundation and one of our corporate values, and we really believe success starts and ends with good leadership. I hope you're as excited as I am to hear from Alison today of the Minnesota Science Museum, a treasured organization in our community for the good work that they do. So thank you again for allowing us to be here. I'm proud to be with Old National and proud to be your sponsor today. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. So we are grateful to partner with Old National Bank. It's because, again, right, that you put trust in what you see in this value of good leadership that we come together. And that's why we get to have speakers like Alison Brown come and share her wisdom with us. But if you've been to a Good Leadership Breakfast before, you know there's a couple things that we do each and every time that allow us to zoom in on our own work that allows us to go and connect with one another. And one of those is the 7 F's wheel. So I'm going to invite you to pull out your phones again, You'll notice on the notepads on your table, one of the two little QR codes on the bottom says 7Fs. Go ahead and pull up the 7Fs right now on your phone. So the 7Fs wheel serve as a great scorecard for each of us personally, and in the spirit of good leadership, help us strengthen relationships, build trust, and embrace healthy tension with those around us. So right now you will see the 7Fs. You have the opportunity to input how you are feeling in each of those: faith, family, finances, fitness, friends, fun, and future. 1 would be things couldn't be any worse within that area. 10 is things couldn't be any better in that area. So right now, mindfully take some time to put each one of those into your own perspective. We'll give you a couple minutes of time to think about that. Benny, how about some 7Fs music, eh? You got it. If you're wondering what 7Fs music is, now you know. A nice little suspension there to bring us back into conversation, right? Because we enter in the information, but now we take time to look at it. So as you hit enter and it pulls up your wheel, what does it look like? Will your wheel roll? Are there any outliers? Anything that's sticking in or out more in comparison to the others? Well, take some time right now around your table to talk about what you see. So as we put a pause on your table conversation and bring the conversation back into the room, I sat down at my table for a moment and the conversation came up about where there's maybe that outlier. And what it looks like when the world stops in certain ways and then obviously starts up again. So as we look at what you've shared, are you on a team where your colleagues care about the shape of your 7Fs wheel? 70% of you said yes. I think knowing that most people in this room are connected to those who sponsor the Good Leadership Breakfast today, that very much speaks to the fact that our 7Fs aren't things we just work on at home, right? They're not our personal things, but they're influenced and supported by when we go to work, when we are around the people who maybe are of a different proximity to ourselves. Should we care about these things together? The answer is yes. With change happening faster and faster, right now is the slowest that change is ever going to happen again. Right? Being in a community of support that allows you to be aware of what's going on inside of you with all these different aspects of your well-being, right? It matters. So I invite you right now, either take a screenshot of your 7Fs wheel or download the PDF on your phone. And then when we come back together again in March, we'll do this again, right? This is not a stagnant exercise. What you see right there is not a noun, it's a verb, it's a process. So the conversation you just had, how does it influence the conversation you have at work? How does that influence how you look at your own well-being in relationship to the work that you do? So it's about time that we invite the person that you've all been waiting for up to the stage. I am so excited to welcome the founder and creator of the Good Leadership Breakfast, a thought leader in the executive coaching industry, whose firm Good Leadership is creating the category of executive team coaching. Everybody give a round of applause to Paul Botts as he comes on up to the stage, y'all.
Thank you.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah. Let's give it up for JC. It's his first time up here on stage. We're so grateful. Yeah, thank you. You're going to get to know JC a lot better. He'll be with us next year for sure. And so thanks for the energy you bring here today.
Thanks, Paul.
So to really understand any moment in time, it's important that we think back to where we were and how we got here. This week has been an amazing experience for Melinda, my wife, and me. We started this breakfast in January of 2010. So go back there with me. How old were you in January of 2010? How old were your kids? My kids were 20, 18, and 16, one in college, one in high school, one in junior high. And we had just started on this journey to create this firm around this idea that goodness pays. And it was at a pretty dark time in our society during the Great Recession. So as I was thinking about this and projecting ahead today, it occurred to me that in all of this, since that time, I've become a grandpa. Yeah, isn't that something? one of life's biggest accomplishments. And Addie was born during COVID. She's 14 months now. And that got me to thinking about COVID and all that's happened in the last 21 months. And if there's anything we've learned, is that there is no straight line between where we were and where we're at right now. And those of us whose lives are going in the right direction, we have definitely learned to handle all the U-turns and to recalibrate the shoulds in our head. Well, this shouldn't be happening, or this should happen, and we should get together this way, right? I mean, we had to give up that stuff. Otherwise, we couldn't stay sane. That happened to us here in the business as well. I have to tell you that in March of 2010, I wondered what was going to happen to good leadership. Pretty much every client we had called to take a pause. And what that meant was they weren't sure they could pay their bills. And so we had some pretty self-reflective moments where we're like, what does this mean for us? But then the world intervened and people started picking up the phone again. And here we are. I'm happy to say that our firm has actually grown year over year twice during COVID. And part of it, I think, is because of the energy we've been able to create in rooms like this. So we're really, really grateful. I want to show you a picture of what we decided to do. So when everything shut down, we started calling our sponsors, many of you here in the room, saying, what should we do? And you said, well, just find a way, will you? We don't want this to go away. So we broadcast the March 2020 breakfast with John Thomas, this huge, lovely man from the Timberwolves, with one iPhone in the Aspiration Suite of Good Leadership. I am safe to say that was the most nervous I have ever been in my entire life, was when we pushed send on that thing to get that out over Facebook. But you know what? We found a way, and we found our partners at CCX Media who are the people who are at the cameras today. They became our partners, and we broadcast out of a TV studio, not knowing when we'd be back in the ballroom. And I can tell you, you've heard a lot about Old National today. You're going to hear about it more, because it was our friends at Old National who said, you know what? Find a way. Let's get back in the ballroom, because we knew it would be fun like this. So here we are. It's beautiful to know that some things haven't changed. We were nervous. Have you ever thrown a party and wondered if everyone was going to come? That's what it felt like at our office a couple of weeks ago when we invited you all to be here. So what we're learning now is that in the context of all this, as I get reflective about what's happened over the last 21 months, I'm intellectually honest in saying there's been a lot of growth in us as individuals. And I'm happier. I'm healthier. I'm a lot more confident as a leader and as a business owner as well. And I'm seeing people like you, the strong ones. We're getting stronger because of all this, but we've also seen that the opposite is true in some of our leadership teams that we work with. So it's most important today that we see what we're doing now as a celebration. This is sort of a triumph over all of the ambiguity and the things that we've been dealing with in the back of our minds, those shoulds and those what ifs. And so we're so happy that you guys are here, that we're celebrating our mission. The mission of the Good Leadership Breakfast is to spread goodness through good leaders, because we've proven that goodness pays. It's a mission that matters. Goodness is all about people thriving together, and we've learned a lot about that over the last 20 months for sure. One of the most exciting things that happened during COVID is we thought about these pivots that we had to make, right? And one of them was we couldn't do coffee anymore. Everybody, when you do what I do for a living, and you guys all know this, you get a lot of people that send a note through your LinkedIn saying, hey, I'd love to get to know you. Can we do coffee? So for 20 months, we couldn't do coffee. So we decided to do 15-minute get-to-know-you team and Zooms meetings. And I did over 100 of them. And one of the people I met was Alison Brown. It's amazing how much you can get to know people over Zoom. And actually, this morning is the first time she and I had ever met, shaken hands, had a hug. And so it's exciting. I'm so excited to introduce you to somebody that I've learned to really adore, even though today's the first day we've actually ever met. So what I've learned about Alison is that her passion for science is equal to anybody's passion for anything else. I am not a scientist. I know a little bit, But boy, to hear how she feels about what science can do to help us improve not only the Minneapolis-St. Paul community, but our global worldview. So I am really excited to introduce you to my new friend, Alison Brown. Would you come and join us here? Wonderful. Alison, let's give people a little bit of a teaser for what it is we're going to get into here in our interview. First, if I didn't know you at all, what do you want me and the rest of us here to know about? Who is Alison Brown?
Well, as you said, I'm the president and CEO of the Science Museum of Minnesota. I'm a wife with a wonderful husband who's a great chef. I have 3 adult children. And I moved here about 6 years ago from San Francisco. So I'm moving into my 6th winter. And what really inspires me and moves me is to use my power to create the just and equitable world, and particularly in the United States, that we've striven for. And to particularly inspire other white individuals like myself, see that they can also be part of that power and create the change that we need within our society.
Yes, gosh, you wouldn't had no way of knowing you moved right into the very center of where some of this has really started again. Well, you're a CEO, and we've been focusing these meetings this year on CEOs. Did you always want to be a CEO?
That's a great question. No, I did not. But since I was a little girl around 12 years old, I knew I wanted to go into business. My father was an entrepreneur, and I really admired him. And so from then on, I knew I wanted to go in business. But I have to tell you, Paul, when I was around 12, I read an article in a magazine that told me, so I grew up in the 60s. I'm 63 right now. And in the 60s, there were not a lot of women in business.
Okay.
And this article explained to me why women should not go into business. And I was devastated, just devastated. And so I went and got my father, the entrepreneur, and said, but I want to go into business. And he basically said, you go, girl. And so I did. So I wanted to be a business executive for decades. But I never wanted to be a CEO. But I wanted to be in a leadership position.
So there you go. That's why we invited Alison Brown to be our speaker. Let's give it up for Alison here, okay?
Thank you.
Yeah, good. Come on over and have a seat.
Thanks.
We're going to do one more regular activity. If you've been to Good Leadership Breakfast in the past, this is near and dear to our hearts. Store, this may be a handy paint pail. Here, it's the Bucket of Goodwill. Mark Bergman, 2nd year of the Good Leadership Breakfast, asked the question, hey, how can we raise some money through the energy that we create right here? And since then, this is how we've been doing it. So you'll go ahead and see a handy paint pail sitting on your table. And through this very simple little object, we're going to add to the $350,000 that we've raised through the Good Leadership Breakfast to give to a charity of one of your choices today. So 2 steps. Number 1, consider how grateful you are. Consider the resources you have, and then reach into your pockets. An IOU, a check. There's a QR code on that notepad that you can donate online, or we also accept cash. Oh, thanks, Paul. Thanks, Alison. That didn't look staged at all. They just had their cash. Everybody keeps their cash sitting out on the table, right?
Yeah, that's
okay,
right.
so step 1, put your cash, your check, your IOU in the bucket. Step number 2, grab your business card and put that in the bucket as well.
Oh, look what I have.
Hey!
I'm going to take mine out because there's no way I'm winning this thing.
Pulling out the potential awkward moment. Good call, Paul.
Yep.
So, what we're going to do in a little bit is we will go ahead and collect these buckets, and then later on, we'll tally up the money. Alison will draw out one of the business cards, and whoever's card is pulled will get to decide where the money from today's Bucket of Goodwill will go to. So, yeah, cool. I agree, Sally. So as you connect the Bucket of Goodwill to our previous task of the 7 F's wheel, we like to think that generosity is less about the score we have in our finances and more about the score we have on our future. The goodness you put into the world today has a direct positive correlation to your tomorrows. So we're going to give you a minute here to go ahead and either donate online through the QR code, put your business cards and cash in the bucket. Benny, how about some giving money music, eh? Hey, thank you so much for filling the buckets today, everybody. My colleagues will come around to collect those shortly. It's through the goodwill of our sponsors. I am a broken record saying it, that we are all here and that we can do the things that we do. So let's look at a message from our sponsor, Imagine IT, right now while they come around and collect the buckets.
Hi, this is Mark Miller with Imagine IT. I'm one of the co-founders at Imagine IT and actually the Chief Happiness Officer. At Imagine IT, we work with small companies to help them use their technology to make change and build change within their communities. Internally, we talk a lot about happiness. In fact, our why statement is to expand our circles of happiness out into the world. And we do that through helping companies find technologies and use technologies to the greatest levels to really change the world that we live in. And I think that the focus of the Good Leadership Breakfast being on goodness, there's a very much a parallel between that and the happiness that we aspire to reach every day at Imagine IT. I believe that these two parallels are wonderful things for us to focus on, and we are certainly happy to be part of Good Leadership, and we hope you enjoy the breakfast this morning. Thanks.
Let's give a round of applause for Imagine IT. Thanks, Mark. So in the house here, 39% say yes. Everyone on my team knows one another's goals. About 59% say no. Right? That we have an opportunity to know the people that we're working with, similar to the 7 Fs, right? When we know about what's going on within the people who we're working with, then we can start as team, start deciding what direction we're going and mobilizing together. Let's look at one more question, and then you can chat around the tables. Well, I hope you've had great moments of conversation that we'll get to continue on in a little bit. But as we prepare to move to Alison sharing with us today, I want you to know that now the poll is open for you to ask questions to Alison. So type in questions that you have, and we'll ask some of them later on in the interview. Paul, what do you think about the polling questions today?
Well, Alison and I were just talking here a little bit that I think the data we collected today is actually the reason why good leadership exists. When we engage with our clients the very first time, most of them think of themselves as a collection of individuals that just happen to report to the CEO who have to meet once or twice a week. And most of the time they spend all their best energy reporting on what they're doing in their department. And you know, the basis of goodness is that people will thrive together. And we think the epicenter of goodness in an organization is the executive team. Those are the people that if they're thriving together, the organization should thrive. In other words, if they're not aligned at the top, everyone else suffers. So one of the biggest no-brainers, I think, is to figure out ways that everybody is rewarded and incented to help each other hit their goals. Duh. But every time we do that research, we get the same exact thing. So I'm fascinated to learn a little bit more about how you think about that, Alison. But let's even back up farther. So you didn't really get a chance to tell us how you grew up. I find these stories fascinating all the time, but I really found your story fascinating. So how did you grow up?
Thank you, Paul. So I grew up in what would be considered a conventional household out in the suburbs. And actually in what now is called Silicon Valley in the Bay Area.
Just a normal place. Yeah.
But then it wasn't Silicon Valley because it was pre-technology. And my father, as I mentioned earlier, was an entrepreneur. And he really has OCD. So, and that actually helped him probably with his business because he really could focus on it. A wonderful mother who really kept us all together and kept us moving forward. And, I'm really the black sheep of my family, as I like to say. I'm the only non-scientist in the family. Everybody else is a physicist. And so I rebelled against that, and I actually am the M in STEM, so science, technology, engineering, and math. So I went down the math side. So I really went far afield from physics. Never taken a physics course in my career. And so I would say, I had a very traditional upbringing. It was not very conventional.
Okay. So I'm really interested to probe that deeper. So if you were a math, I also think it's funny that you think that math and physics are a long ways apart. I'm a liberal arts guy. I did everything I could to stay out of that building. Yep. Well, I'm curious to find out, so as a mathematician, you were motivated by an article that got you into business. I mean, what were some of the pivot points that got you from there to actually becoming the CEO at the Science Museum?
Yeah, I'll go back to the job just before this one. I was in San Francisco at a large museum in Golden Gate Park. And I went there as their CFO, or their Chief Financial Officer.
Okay, that makes sense.
And I went there for a really large building project. And it ended up being a $500 million project. And my vision was I would go there for the project itself, and then I would leave. So that's the first pivot, was just going to get, and that's what got me into a museum field. But I realized that actually the end of the project was the beginning of things, not the end of things. So I stayed on, and I actually stayed 17 years. And by the end of that, I was the chief of staff.
Okay.
And so that's kind of like the second in command. And then
you can see the whole organization from there.
Right.
Yeah, okay, good.
And I've been involved in all sorts of different aspects of the organization. And then I just said, I really want to run a museum. And so that's when I told our board that I wanted to make this transition. And so we worked out a plan so that we could make a smooth transition. And unbeknownst to me, here in Minnesota, Dr. Jolly told his board the same month I told my board that he was moving to another organization. So I interviewed here and came in during the winter time with a high of 1 degree.
Yeah, there you go.
Weekend, and fortunately got the job, and it's just been fantastic. I do want to say though, so this is my first time being a CEO. After about 1 year, I called one of my favorite bosses I ever worked for, and I said, you know, it's a heck of a lot easier telling you what to do than having to do it myself.
Yeah, that's right. There. So that's one of the benefits right there. So the Science Museum of Minnesota, it was said earlier, it's an institution here. Now you've been here long enough to really understand the organization. What really, I know you're biased, but what makes this place really special? Because I think it is special. What do you think it is that makes it special?
Yes, thanks. So I'm going to say, using unbiased data, so this is done by outside firms that look at organizations across the nation. The Science Museum of Minnesota is one of the top 3 science museums, science centers in the nation. But what I think makes it special and unique is its focus on equity. So we describe our mission as science and education centering equity. And that's really a unique position for a science museum to take. If we go back our history 400 years ago, scientists created this concept of race. And race doesn't actually exist scientifically, but it was created to justify slavery hundreds of years ago. And then it's been
for counting purposes.
Yeah, perpetuated forward. And we also know that STEM careers are growing 3 times faster than all other careers combined in the next 10 years. And we already have a shortage of people going into these careers. So the Science Museum is really focusing on how do we help everybody see, particularly with a focus on girls, youth of color, and youth from low-income families, see themselves going into STEM careers. And that's been a long-time program for them, that they're really focused on this in a way that I have not seen in other science museums.
So I have to help my granddaughter Addie like science. Yeah, that's fascinating. And I'll have to bring her to the Science Museum for sure.
That'd be great, because there's different ways that people can go into science or technology, engineering, and math. I can't think of any career that doesn't use some aspect of those to move forward, including farming or banking. All of them use these in their skills.
Well, you and I, when we were first getting to know each other, I told you that I didn't like science, didn't know how to learn it and everything, and you said, oh, no, you know science. And then we started talking about this back to the office. We use scientific concepts all the time to explain leadership, like momentum.
Yeah.
momentum is what leaders do. We create momentum around ideas and culture and things like that, and that's clearly a science concept. And the 7F's wheel, right? It'll roll if it's all twos, but not with much energy. So that's fascinating to me. So our perspective, you've known this now as we've gotten to know each other, and you've seen the dialogue here, is that the most important thing that leaders do, CEOs, is to build a team that's all united around things. So in what ways do you think your team, during all this context of COVID, should be feeling like winners these days?
Yeah, well, first off, this has been just a really difficult time for all organizations and for everybody. But where we should feel like winners are really around, we are developing our strategic plan that goes out through 2030, thinking about what were the lessons we learned during the pandemic. Okay. And you and I were talking about that a little bit, and you talked about it here on the stage, what lessons you learned.
Yep.
And there are three things that we're thinking about as we move forward. One, we, museums, have really thought about the digital virtual space as an or. We're either going to be in person or we're going to be digital virtual. Yeah. So we underinvested in that area. Sure. And now we're thinking about it as an and. Sure. They complement each other. And so we're really looking at that as we move forward. We have to invest in both. The second area is partnerships. Okay. We did partnerships with people before, but we're going to do it even more and really look at focusing on with other organizations and how we can work together to create that just, equitable society that we want to have. We all want to have, because we all know that will lead to better outcomes. So one of the things we did was during the pandemic, when the museum was closed, we did actual social distance learning hub in the museum itself. Partnering with the St. Paul Promise neighborhood. And the kids actually did their learning in the museum, down in our facilities, in the school classrooms, in our classrooms. And then after school, they were up in the museum. So it was just a great program. And then the third thing is we really started communicating out about the science that we do. So we have about 30 scientists on staff who do original scientific research. Just around paleontology, biology, and then also around climate change. And we have about maybe 10 scientists who study watershed research. And I don't know, how many of you go to a lake cabin? Well, I came from a state that doesn't have enough water to a state with a lot of water, and our lakes are under stress. And that is from the algae bloom, toxic algae blooms, invasive species. So these scientists are studying that and how to help keep our water safe. And we found that people really appreciate hearing these stories, learning about the science that we do. So that's the third area that we'll keep focusing on.
Well, I'm wondering how the pandemic changed what you're expecting from your team members. I mean, it's changed a lot. How did that change what you're expecting from your team members?
We really have to keep focusing on our mission and keep making certain that we are communicating well. I would say in the very beginning of the pandemic, we let that little amygdala, that little lizard brain,
the fear
take hold. Fear response. We're meeting daily, making decisions, and we lost some focus there. So it was a reminder to us that we have to stay together and keep focusing on our priorities. So we have what we call a mission flywheel, and we have 5 priorities that we plan our work around and communicate both with our board of trustees and internally with our staff. And so we've really have realized we have to keep our communications good and strong. And I think that's really one of the things that came forward from the pandemic.
Yeah, I think that is most of the strong teams we've seen have gotten much, much better communicating because of the pandemic. And so it's good to hear that. You and I have talked about this. Many of you have heard this concept before. We think about high-performing executive teams as being bonded together by this thing we call epoxy theory. So epoxy is 2 chemicals that do nothing by themselves, but when you put them together, it creates a really strong bond. So we think about relationship capital as one of those compounds, and structural integrity is another. We interviewed some people on your team to find out if you were a structural or a relational leader, even though you're very scientific, they described you as someone with remarkable relationship skills around the team. How do you make that work? How do you use those skills to make your team function at a high level?
Well, I do think structure matters, and I have thought about that. But I also think people can eat structure for lunch, and personalities also matter. So when I think about it, what I really focus in on is what motivates people. How do we align around our goals? That's around that mission flywheel that I talked about, and I know that people need to feel that they're respected, they're heard, and that they can bring their full voice to the table. So those are some of the things that I think about, and when I'm managing people.
Well, they play out to when we talk to people on your team. Part of the mission of the Good Leadership Breakfast is to identify success habits of people who are brilliant, like this one. And what we want to do is to pass those along to you so you can improve how you're leading. And so your team told us about 3 very specific success habits that they've observed in your leadership. And we'll start with the first one. And I learned a lot from this. So that you actually had them establish a purpose statement for the senior team. Now, I can tell you that we enter into organizations a lot in the client relationships where they're kind of wandering. And we help them identify their purpose as an organization, but we have not yet had the senior team identify their purpose. We will now. So why do you do that? Why is that important to you? And how exactly did you go about doing it?
Thanks, Paul. So, and I'll tell you our purpose statement. So this is for the senior leaders themselves, not the organizations. Why we are here: to courageously transform the future through science, equity, and education.
Say it again. That's powerful.
Why we are here. It's for the senior leaders. To courageously transform the future through science, equity, and education.
Who wouldn't want to be on that team, right? That's amazing.
And we developed it as a group. And we were all sitting in a circle, and we had an empty chair in the middle. And somebody would go in and come up with a draft of our purpose statement. And we had a facilitator who was writing down the words, and then we just popcorned in and out to create it and change it. And then about a year in, we just on our own, as a group, made a tweak to it. I can't tell you what that tweak was because I don't remember anymore.
That's okay.
And made it to what it is now. And at each meeting, we read that statement before we start our senior leaders meeting. In fact, I brought, we have it at the top of our agenda. When we're meeting in person, we have them on big poster boards, so they're up in the room. We also have our behaviors, our senior leader agreements, and thematic goals.
Yeah, very thorough. It's terrific. There's another one that we learned about, which is this orbit ritual. You called orbit, of course, a science term,
yes,
right?
Right.
2-minute high-level sharing. I find this fascinating because we talk about equal voice, equal time. This is a way to actually build it structurally. And so tell us, why is that important to you, and how exactly do you make it work?
When we're in person, we would stand up and do it. Now when we're in Zoom, we do in Zoom land. The reason it's important is a couple-fold. One is a museum's like a spider web, and you can tug a string here, maybe a little like your graphic that you had.
Yeah.
And it will have an unexpected impact over there. And this is a way that people can share what they're doing, and or else share something that they are thinking about. And then we leave time for Q&A afterwards. And it may be that they just want to get clarification, or they may say, hey, Paul, I need to meet with you about X, Y, and Z. Or I need to bring in one of my team members because you may not realize it's going to have an impact there. So that's one of the reasons why we do that, and also helps build trust.
And how many people on the team?
There are 6 of us.
Okay, so that's a 15-minute ritual all
Yeah.
in. Yeah, okay, very cool. So the third thing is just like the biggest no-brainer of all time, especially in the context of COVID, and actually doing things together. Field trips and outings. And I can tell you as an executive team coach, often when we suggest that we actually stay overnight or have dinner together as a team, most of the time they're like, why would we do that? Well, because actually sharing experiences makes you better. So tell us, well, why do you think as a CEO that's important? And then how have you managed to do that even during, COVID land?
Well, I'm going to be honest, and that's one that we have let fall a little bit. And we are trying to figure out ways to do it and even do it over Zoom and share time to just talk about life and what's happening and all. And not everybody's comfortable doing that. But there's a lot of data, and I'm sure you have it in your, that actually makes for a stronger team. Because we think that we're just like this little funnel at work, but we're not. We spill out. We're humans. And that makes us that builds trust. Yeah, what that reminded me of is we have a client that's global, that has an executive team, 13 people, 5 different continents, 9 different time zones. They're not going to meet each other anytime soon. But last year, before Thanksgiving, we asked them to do a round robin and explain their holiday traditions. A lot of these people, Christmas is not a part of their thing. And we thought, in a naive way, we allowed 15 minutes for that exercise. It took 75 out of the 90, and we probably cut it off short. So that's one way of doing sort of the similar things. And you know our point of view. We think that people can grow as much personally as they can professionally on the team. So I love these success habits. You will see those come and live on in the lives of some of these people and some of our other clients. So you know what? This has been awesome. JC.
Yeah, so Alison, questions from the community here for you. First one, what strategies should be used to advance justice and equity in the workplace?
For the Science Museum, what we are focusing on is first ourselves. And the Science Museum will be 115 years old in February. And we're a very white-centric organization. We really are founded off the principles that were brought in from 115 years ago. So we need to change how we operate so that everybody who comes into the museum can bring their full selves. And that's the most important thing that we need to do, because otherwise we know that our BIPOC employees, our BIPOC visitors will not be comfortable. That's fundamentally the most important thing that we need to do. We've made progress so that our BIPOC staff are comfortable, because we do surveying by an outside firm, but we're not where we need to be. We've made progress so that visitors, our BIPOC visitors, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, visitors are comfortable, but we still have progress and work that we need to do. It'll be a continual process, but we're excited to do this work ourselves.
That's an amazing explanation for that question. I have a sister, my sister Heidi Botts Rogers does diversity and inclusion work. She has a husband who's half African American, half Native American. They have the most beautiful children I've ever seen. And I asked her about this one day, and she said to me, she looked me straight in the eye, and she said, as a middle-aged white male, the thing that I need you to stop doing is feeling targeted by this discussion. Because we know, as middle-aged white males, we've had a lot to do with this, historically and even now. But she said, you can't move forward if you feel targeted. Would you get rid of that? And that was a powerful moment for me. So I love your answer, and it made a connection with me personally.
Yeah, thanks for sharing.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Alison, pretty much a large share of the questions ask you to keep going. So here's another one. Looking at the room here today, how do we increase racial and ethnic diversity to reflect the rich multicultural tapestry of Minnesota and beyond?
That's a great question. I think we need to really face the truth in Minnesota. So I didn't come here from Minnesota. I came to Minnesota, as I said, from San Francisco. Minnesota has some of the worst racial disparities in the country. And there's been a lot of talk about making change, and we've not made progress in this. And a lot of the work has been around asking BIPOC people to come into white spaces. And I think white people need to go into BIPOC spaces. And again, it's really incumbent upon those of us, like myself, who identify as white, to work on our biases. We all have biases. This is how we grew up in America. It's a white-centric, it's a white supremacy culture. And until we white people create change, we won't become the country that we want. and the state that we want and the state we need to be. The census for Minnesota shows that we are changing, and we don't want to be stuck where we are, because we know the data shows that when we have diversity at the table, we have better outcomes for everybody. And we don't somehow understand that. Right now, we're like a choir where we're only letting the sopranos sing.
That's amazing. And I think about, in my lifetime, yeah, there you go. Thank you. I interview a lot of people like you who grew up not knowing whether or not women could have positions of power. So we've seen a tremendous change in that area. We have not caught up yet, we know that. We've seen tremendous change in that area. And I wish I could live much, much longer than I think I'm going to, because I want to see this change as well. Yeah, fascinating. What else do you have, JC?
Alison, one thing you just made me think about, I have a friend who's creating curriculum for a dance program she's created. And her mission is to create something where black women don't have to change themselves to participate, that they can show up and be. So it means a lot to me to hear you continuing this in large, big, beautiful ways. This last question, pop culture is kicking in right here a little bit. How did the Science Museum sweatshirt cameo on Stranger Things affect awareness or attendance? Are you familiar with the Stranger Things? Okay, because I'm not. I had to ask Ellen, I'm like, I know the TV show, but what's the? Okay, so.
No, I watched all the episodes. Well, it's. I don't know if it. So, you get me into all sorts of things. Something like that is just wonderful, and just a fantastic for the museum, and it was a fantastic opportunity for the museum. It does not fundamentally change attendance, because attendance at museums is built over time as we build relationships with people. But it still is a great awareness where we can engage with people as they come to the museum over various programs, either at the museum or all around the state. And then that is an opportunity for us to engage with people. But it is interesting how when I wear my hoodie, my purple hoodie, and I can be in another state, somebody will recognize it. So this has just been a great opportunity, and we used it to buy vans for educational programs.
Oh, cool.
And so that was really just a wonderful opportunity for that. And can I just say a little thing about leadership?
Oh, absolutely.
So what was interesting when that came out was the social media group instantly understood the potential. The senior leaders at the time didn't get it. And if the senior leaders had their druthers, we wouldn't have taken advantage of it and had this. So it's because, as you pointed out, the younger generation understood what needed to be done, and then they made it all happen.
Well, I also want to give you a minute to do a little commercial. What's going on at the Science Museum right now, and why should we go there with our kids, grandkids, our friends, in the next several weeks?
Well, we are doing Days of Dinos. We have a fantastic exhibit up right now with dinosaurs, and there's some really important fossils and dinosaurs that are in there. It talks about that dinosaurs aren't just these big things, but there are a lot of small dinosaurs that are really critical. We just redid our race exhibit, and we've updated it, and it tells some of the Minnesota stories. So you actually go in there, and it's designed for you to go in and have a shared experience and have conversations about race. And it's been a powerful experience. I think everybody in this audience should go there and have that. And we have a couple Omni films going right now. One about the blue planet, and another one's probably about dinosaurs. And so we can flip them out, and you can choose either of those two. So those are three things that I think about. But Shadi and I, one of our trustees, Shadi Alomar, said he dropped his kids off, and they spent 6 hours there. And it's a safe place to go. Our ceilings are 17 foot tall. Our HVAC system is extremely robust. So I just would encourage you to come. And as Paul said, I am a little biased.
Yeah. Well, it makes total sense to me now that the Science Museum would have a robust HVAC system.
Well,
right?
that's a whole nother story about sustainability. I won't go into.
There you go. So we've been asking the same exact question of our speakers for more than 7 years now as we close. So we're all about goodness and the idea that goodness pays. So how do you know for sure that goodness pays for you and your leadership?
Well, I think about it in two ways, Paul. And one, when goodness is there, and another, when goodness isn't there.
Okay.
And the Carnegie Foundation did a study that showed that, that about 15% of a person's movement going forward in their career is based on their technical skill. So just 15%. Whether you're a banker or scientist, and 85% is on your ability to work with other people. In other words, to be good, with your EQ and all of that. And then the Gallup did a survey, and they found that it would take, if somebody's working for a really good boss, somebody who really engages them, it would take about a 20% pay raise or more to get that person to leave their really good boss. Now, if the person's working for a really bad boss, they'll leave for no pay increase. And in fact, that's how I got into the museum field. I was working for a really bad boss.
Okay.
That's what got me to the California Academy of Sciences. So goodness pays and badness costs a lot. And goodness pays because employees are engaged, they are comfortable, that they are safe, they make better decisions, they're more creative, and there's much better collaboration. And those are all better outcomes for the organization.
What a fabulous answer. Thank you so much. Let's give it up for Alison Brown.
Thank you, Paul.
Well, the last thing we need you to do for us today is help us with our favorite ritual. JC?
What a great way to show that goodness pays with this ritual right here. But before, I'd like to say that our friends at Handy Paint Pail are actually donating $1,500 in honor of Alison being here today to Planting People Growing Justice, whose CEO is actually here today as a charity very close to Alison's heart. So, Alison, do you want to talk about the charity a little bit?
Yeah, I know, Dr. Artika Tyner is the founder of this charity. Thank you.
Thank you.
Dr. Tyner.
Yeah.
So Planting People Growing Justice also has a leadership institute as part of it. And it's really focusing on reading skills and making certain that kids can see themselves in books and that the people within the books are diverse. And they work on getting these books. In fact, Dr. Tyner has produced, I don't know how many hundreds of books you've written, but she's written a lot of books, and they're really wonderful books, getting them into schools and different community organizations so kids can see themselves and be part of the Youth Leadership Institute as well.
Fantastic.
Wonderful.
We're happy to do that.
Yeah.
All right, Alison, one more job. Step on up.
Okay.
So, with the match from Good Leadership, today we're going to be giving away $2,670 to one of your charities. So I'll have you come up as soon as Alison draws her name. Let's give a round of applause for that $2,607 Alison draws. And the winner is
Mary Book.
Mary Book. Come on up.
Yeah, from Imagine IT,
Imagine
right?
it, yeah.
Yeah, fantastic. Come on up here. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you so
Thanks.
much. I want to take this with me.
Okay, I'll give it to you.
Yes, Mary. Step on up, Mary. So, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what charity you're going to give this $2,670 to today.
This is such a pleasant surprise. Thank you. Mary Book with Imagine IT. I tried to work the room, so I think a lot of you already know me. And you heard Mark's presentation. He's just an extraordinary leader. So grateful to be here with Good Leadership. I have a passion for a few ministries, but one of them in particular is Source. They're located at 26th and Stevens, and they work with the underserved in Minneapolis, from prostitution to homelessness and drug addiction. And so I'd like the money to go to them.
Thank you very
Sounds
much.
good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Mary.
we really appreciate that.
Thank you, everybody. And thanks, Alison, for sharing and inviting us all to consider where we are headed today. And thank all of you for being here and bringing this into reality again. Right now, as we look ahead towards March 10th, we'll be right back here. Our guest that day will be Mike Steigers from Cub Foods. If you haven't taken the time to type in Northside Cub Foods and Mike Steigers' name, please do so and watch the Care 11 clip as you'll get a really good insight into the courage and insight that Mike carries in looking at a lot of the things that we spoke about today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Paul to wrap things up today. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, thank you, JC. I really appreciate the energy that you bring to this and looking forward to 2022.
I appreciate it.
Obviously, thank you to you, our sponsors. When we were trying to decide what to do with this thing, you're the ones who said, do whatever you have to, figure it out, we'll get together again, and here's that day today. So we're super grateful about that. You know, the mission of the Good Leadership Breakfast is to spread goodness because we've proven that goodness pays. And so we've invested in your leadership, and I think we collected some pretty fascinating data about how you lead your teams. And the fact is that just barely over half of the people that we researched, including in this room, and then over 1,000 people outside of this room, barely half of the people on the executive teams understand the goals of the people around the table. Barely half. An almost identical number, only just slightly over half of us have incentives for the team to thrive together. We want every organization to hit their goals. That's why we exist. Goals both personally and professionally. I don't see how that's possible if we don't know what the goals are around the table. And if we don't have some sort of an incentive system, no matter how soft, to make it sure that we're all winning together. That's something you can take away and do something with starting, I think, Monday. So beyond that, we're also really passionate to share with you the success habits that we learned from Alison Brown. I learned something in this exercise that I'm thrilled about. Not only does your organization have to have a purpose statement, but the senior executive team needs to have one too. You can bet your life we're going to be coaching around this now starting early as Monday of next week. So a purpose statement for the senior executive team. Second thing, we believe in equal time and equal voice around the table. Alison's figured out a way to do it structurally. So everybody gets a 2-minute high-level orbit ritual. I think that's a brilliant suggestion. And then, you know what, now that things are opening up, do you have a plan to get your executive team together? Share the same air. Create an experience where you will all be able to remember it. I can tell you one of the reasons why we're so busy right now, Good Leadership, and why I've been on so many airplanes lately is because people are starting to do this again. So my closing thoughts have to do with what have we seen in how organizations have started to come back to normal. And one of the things that we're seeing reinforced is this basic truism, that the only way that powerful people actually get along, and powerful people are people who have choices in their lives. How do they actually get along? Is when they feel like they're building something special together. And also, they're doing that with people they respect and admire. The 7F's wheel is one of the ways that we advance that respect and admire concept, but there's a lot of hard work that has to be done for a team of powerful people to believe they're building something special together. This is the planning season. Most organizations who, end their year on 12/31, we're planning for 2022. And I want to caution you against something. We're seeing a trend of teams who are realizing that everybody's super busy. I mean, we're all tired, and we're all working really, really hard, focusing on the things we are told to focus on. But we've seen executive teams pull back in their planning and do the planning with just a couple of people who, quote unquote, have time for it. It's a really bad idea. The way to engage people is to get them involved. The way to get over how tired we are is to be asked to contribute to the future of the organization, to help put your special sauce in that special thing that the team is trying to create. We have one client right now who's learned that lesson in a really hard way. It's an engineering firm that are working on some acquisitions right now. They haven't closed any of them, so they're really strung out. They decided that even though in the past they followed good leadership advice to get a lot of people involved in planning, this year they took the 5 of them, they went to a hotel overnight, and they built the plan. What happened when they came back to the office? People were pissed. Part of their intimacy with the organization was the fact that they got a chance to contribute. So they started all over again. It was a really difficult mistake that they made, but they learned a really powerful truism, that the only way that powerful people get along is to feel like they're building something special together. So we have one question that I asked Alison that I want to challenge you to ask this question in the next week or 2 of your team. To help people get over that tiredness that we're feeling, you can ask this question. In what ways should our team be feeling like winners today? In what ways should our team be feeling like winners today? It's a really powerful idea. It's where the momentum comes from, our science concept, right? It's where the momentum comes from in helping you do extraordinary things. So it's now where I get to remind you again that the mission of the Good Leadership Breakfast is to spread goodness through good leaders like you, because we've proven goodness pays. Goodness is when people thrive together in a culture of encouragement, accountability, and positive teamwork. We focus on good leadership because that's the art and science of people working together to get great things done. So I'm going to remind you that the highest compliment of any good leader is you radiate goodness. So now I'm asking you collectively, all of you, we're back in the ballroom. We got to share the same air. We're celebrating together. So are you ready to radiate goodness today? We're going to do that one more time. Are you ready to radiate goodness today? Thank you very much. We'll see you again in March.